Lindy Morelli, who is a canonically
And just for
recognized Carmelite hermit.
now, I love you most of
So, does this look good, or do you want me to do anything else to adjust
No, you
anything?
look fantastic. You look
Okay.
fantastic.
of all.
Well, good afternoon, Lindy, and it's so good to see you again. Welcome
Thank
home.
you. It's good to see you too.
You've been in Medjugorje for some time now.
Yeah, I was there for 40 days this time, and this was my 13th, yeah, my 13th trip, I think.
40 days. So you're like Jesus in the desert there.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to know what happened to you as we like to know what happened to Jesus, right? What we hear what happened in his temptations, all right?
You know that one day I went to see someone, and I was down by the church, and I was there by myself in Medjugorje. So I was there by myself, and I was going to try to get home, but there's something happened to the internet, and I couldn't use the phone to call someone to pick me up. And so I was at the church, and I was trying to figure out what I could do, and there was no one around that spoke English. So I don't know, I don't know if you can picture this, but it was an interesting event that happened, because I was there and I was thinking, somehow I have to ask these Italian people if they can help me, and I only know a little bit of Italian, but I think I could make myself understood. But they were a little ways away, and I didn't have a cane because I forgot my cane at home. So then I was like walking over to them and hoping there was no steps. I was walking really slowly. Then I asked them to help me, and they understood what I wanted, but because they said, "Oh, hold on, we'll help you. Just wait a minute." I understood that in Italian, but then somehow no one came back. So then I wasn't quite sure what to do, and I didn't know where the bench was where I was before. I knew that if I turned around and tried to find it, I wouldn't be able to find it. So I decided that I was going to sit on the ground and just wait a while. There wasn't really anything else I could do at that moment. So then all of a sudden, this really nice sister came over that takes care of the church, the pilgrims and all that. So I asked her if I could go to information, and she helped me. Oh, before she came over, another lady came over, and she just came over all of a sudden out of nowhere and said, I thought she said, "Do you need help?" or something. But she said, "Are you hungry?" She's Polish. I knew she was Polish. But so she said, "Are you hungry?" And then she gave me a bag with bread in it and meat in it. And it was like from one of the restaurants that she got, this beautiful, flatbread and this beautiful grilled meat that she gave me. And so anyway, so then I was like, I couldn't believe she gave me this whole bag of food. But anyway, then finally this other sister came over, and she took me to the information desk, and I got home. But it was an interesting story. It was really a wonderful story, because it sort of was it sort of was like what my trip was like. It sort of was like what life is like for me in a way. But it's such a blessing anyway. It's so wonderful. And it reminds me of, I think when I told you about that story before, you said, "Oh, isn't that kind of like Elijah with the ravens being fed by the bread and the quail," or whatever it was? Isn't that what you said?
Exactly. Exactly.
I think that was so nice. That was such a wonderful story, such a wonderful, occurrence that happened.
And what I think is wonderful too is that you were willing to go to Medjugorje, which has changed a lot since you were last there. How long has it been since you were there?
I was there in 2014, when I spent a lot of time there, it was in 80s and early 90s, before the war. So it's really, really different from that time.
Well,
it's like a little bustling metropolis now.
So before it was more like a village?
It was very, very primitive. Like there was hardly any paved roads, and the phones, there was no telephones hardly at all. Sometimes you didn't have, well, a lot of times you didn't have hot water. Most of the time you didn't have heat. We don't have heat now a lot of times either, but it was just different. There was no ice cubes, and there was no neon signs. There was no anything like that. There was nothing like that. It was just a church and the hills, pretty much.
So now, when you went then, and you were blind, you've been blind since birth. How did you get along? How did you find things?
Well, I had a family. I was adopted by a family, this wonderful family that I went up to see this time, and I just love them dearly. So I went to visit them this time too, and they adopted me. They helped me get around, and I met people back then. And I used to go during the off seasons a lot, in wintertime when there was only a few English-speaking people in the village, and you could easily meet people very easily. And I mean, it really wasn't that hard. Once I started meeting people this time, it wasn't really that hard at all, because everybody's very they want to help. I mean, everybody is there for the same reason, pretty much.
So now, though, it's paved roads, I imagine cars, vehicles, etc.
Tons of cars and buses all the time pouring in.
And you were there basically on your own, I trying to get along in a new territory. How do you get along in a new city? Basically, is what this was, and a noisy one at that, right?
Well, I just asked for help. I mean, I went to the church sometimes in the evenings when I could, and there was the first night there was a beautiful lady. I was listening to see what language she spoke. She spoke English, so she helped me get to communion. And it's really, you have to find your way, because there's like lots and lots of crowds, and so you just listen and listen and ask for help, which is pretty good. I mean, it's a pretty good paradigm for spiritual life, isn't it?
It really is, and especially as you walk around, basically in the dark. All right, you were just singing a wonderful Saint John of the Cross song, correct? All right, and so here you were doing that in Medjugorje.
It was wonderful, though. I mean, it's kind of like, it reminds me when I was in school, when I was in college one day, and there was a snowstorm outside, and so I was going to try to go to I don't know if I was going to chapel or class or somewhere or another, but I went outside and I had my cane, and because all the sidewalks were covered and you couldn't feel the cracks under the sidewalk, which is what we use to guide ourselves when we're walking with a cane, you would use like the border of the sidewalk to feel like, where you are, and to count the trees or whatever on the side of the sidewalk. But because the sidewalk was all covered with snow, I literally left the door of the dorm, and I got lost like probably about 6 steps away from the dorm. And I was kind of like thinking, where's the side? Where's the grass border? Where are the trees? Like that. And it was like a really scary, I was scary. And then somebody came along and said, "Oh, here, I'll help you." And it was like so easy for her, because she could see, she just knew where I was, but I had no idea where I was, like at all. And I was literally only like 6 steps away from the door. And that sometimes can happen to a person like who's blind, but it's just a paradigm. It's a paradigm of what I've often felt like in my life, and maybe other people might feel like that at times, but really, I guess, we're not really lost. I mean, I think lost is a pretty key word. Lost, lost and found, or I don't know, but it's like somehow feeling lost is very, it's very, you can't get your bearings. You don't know where you are. You don't know how to find the light. You don't know if you should go backwards or forwards, or you're just completely disoriented. And it seems like that can happen easily, not only to a blind person, but to anyone in life. It's happened to me. I felt that way a lot in my life. Somebody said to me, "Oh, you're not lost at all. Because if you're with God, you're not lost," she said. Even though you might feel lost at times,
Well, that's true, and I think that as we move in this spiritual journey that God has called us to, He's calling all the shots. He knows the sidewalk. We don't. All right, and as you went to Medjugorje, knowing all this, willing to be blind, did you even know why you were there?
Well, I just knew I was called to go on a 40-day retreat. I didn't know. And I kind of knew that it was time to do that. I sort of been waiting for this period. I didn't know it was going to manifest itself in a 40-day retreat, but I knew that at some point or another, this theme of my life, the culmination of my vocation or whatever, would have to be revisited. I didn't know, but I didn't know what the 40-day retreat was going to show. Or I knew I was going into a desert. I knew I knew that I was going to be there by myself, and I wanted to be, so I didn't go there. Like, I wasn't like with a lot of people all the time, so I was really happy to be there.
Now, as you went there to respond to the Lord and be with Our Lady, right? Um,
Yeah.
So as you're trying to listen for him and for his voice, and in an environment which was so full of so many people and so many voices, was that a challenge?
No, because I was like I was in sort of like a hermitage, and I can easily block things. I mean, I can block noise out. I mean, unless it's like overwhelming loud noise, but I mean, well, it's one thing to you could still be recollected and still be overwhelmed, if that makes any sense. But you can be overwhelmed physically and not really spiritually overwhelmed. But you know, I wasn't in crowds. Like I didn't go to crowds very often. And even if you are in a crowd, you can always just the cell, the place to be recollected in is inside the heart. So you just you go inside your heart and you're with the Lord. It's pretty easy. I mean,
So here you are with the Lord inside your heart, inside of his heart, right? And in this unique place, Medjugorje, it's like Our Lady has chosen this little space in the middle of a nowhere, right? That you were called to meet her, right? And for what purpose you weren't even sure, right? Is this like a focal point in the world of some sort? Is this?
I think it's the spiritual center of the world. And I think that all the graces, this is just my own thought of it, but all the graces from the divine will, which is, making itself, I don't know how to word this too well, but like we're praying for the reign of the kingdom of God, for the divine will to take over everything. And we're ushering it in, hopefully by our prayers and our sacrifices. But Medjugorje is, in my opinion, Medjugorje is where God is pouring down the graces through Our Lady. Everything comes through Our Lady's hands. We know that already. And I think the three, there's a lot of Fatima is, she said Medjugorje is the fulfillment of what I began in Fatima. And of course, there's Garabandal and Kita in there too. But, we're in very important times of grace. Great. She always keeps saying this is a time of grace. And we know it is because this is the time of mercy. This is the time of divine mercy now. So we have so much to be rejoicing about and so much to be thankful for, so much to be happy about, really, even though they're very challenging times for everybody, But it's a place where she's literally physically pouring down her graces. That's what it's like. If you were there, you would feel like you were in a deluge of grace physically. It's like somebody's pouring down the rain, but the rain of the Spirit on you. And it's not just like, it's because she's there physically. It's like the visionaries, are seeing Our Lady every day. She's there physically. It's not just a sentiment of Our Lady. It's her physical presence coming to them every day still. And the 42nd anniversary is approaching very quickly, So it's pretty serious, pretty amazing what's going on, pretty wonderful.
And so as you felt this deluge of grace coming down to the world, all right, how did you feel the world was responding to that grace? Or what did you feel from the people around you?
Well, I felt everybody's just in the world. People are running around. Kind of like, I don't want to say rats in a maze, but sort of like that. I don't really like that analogy, but I don't know what else to say. Something like people are running around and they're so troubled and they're so upset and they're so crazy and they're so dominated by all their problems and they're so tormented and they're so fearful and they're so frantic. And I can relate to this because I spent a lot of my life, especially the last several years, being just like that. So frantic and so extremely overwhelmed by life and life's problems, because the things that people have to deal with today are crazy things. Like they're things that they're just, between addictions and I don't know, just everything that people have in their families that they didn't expect, that they're not prepared to cope with, that they don't know what to do. Their hearts are broken and they just don't know. They're overwhelmed. People are overwhelmed, and somebody that I talked to there said, Lindy, people are praying out of anxiety. They're not praying with faith and trust. And it's hard to trust if you never had any. Somebody was asking me yesterday, well, how do you really trust? But I guess to me, I think, well, if you really, 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 really know that God loves you, if you really have experienced God's love, then it's easy to trust, because you know that God is in charge and God loves you. If you don't know that God loves you, then you're going to think, well, I can't trust God because something bad is going to happen to me. You know, I don't know how to explain it, but it just seems like the world is spinning off its axis, you know.
And so, as you were there in the midst of that, frantic, almost panicky,
But it's the whole world is like that.
that's right. And you were sitting there in that. What came to you that you were called to do?
Well, I just feel like I just try to. One time, Father Slavko asked me a long time ago, what do you do when somebody comes to you and they're troubled, like a young person or whatever? I just feel like to be with that person, to really, to be with them, to imbibe their suffering and to be with them and to love them and to bring them to God.
And so, did people come to you while you were
Oh
there?
yeah, many people. Yeah.
All right. And what with their troubles?
Yeah, I just try to pray for them and, you know, give them some comfort. I mean, it's not really up to me.
All right. And so, for you, as you were there, not knowing why, just that you were called to be on retreat there and to be present, did you feel that that there was any information, direction for you?
Well, I think I would rather just talk about things in general. I think that people in the world are searching for peace. And I think the way to have peace is to do what Our Lady says. You know, she says over and over, this is the time of grace. So she's asking us to pray and to sacrifice. You know, she's asking us to do that. And she said one time in 91, she said, I'm calling you to prayer and renunciation. She said it several times, prayer and renunciation of the things that mean the most to you. And that seems like it's hard to do, doesn't it? Like, it seems like our crosses or our attachments or whatever you want to call it, or both, or they're tailor-made. Like something that would be hard for somebody to detach from wouldn't be hard for me, but vice versa. So it seems like, you know, God knows how to form us individually as people, as individual persons, but also to help us to be on the path of holiness, to teach us how to love, to teach us how to be converted, like Our Lady says over and over. We all have our own individual journeys. I don't know, but she is calling us to prayer and sacrifice. So like, there's so many opportunities in one day, just in one day alone, to offer sacrifices of thanksgiving and praise, even in little tiny things. They're not little in her eyes. You know, it could be something really small, like I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, but you know, the computer doesn't work, for instance, or somebody says something that you don't understand, or just something is wrong, something goes wrong with something financially, or I don't know. I'm just trying to think of an example. A conversation is hard to understand, or just anything like that. But Saint Therese said that these are little rose petals to throw up to God, you know, and I think that's good, because this is the spiritual material that Our Lady can use, you know. She's asking for that so that we could, well, not only so that she could help us to learn we're practicing virtue with the help of God, but not only that, but when we offer these little trifles or little sacrifices, or maybe something bigger, but the little ones are I think I read recently in the Book of Heaven somewhere where it says the little ones are the little sacrifices are the ones that are really, really precious to God. I mean, all of them are, but they're the little sacrifices that we offer every day are really precious to God, because they're sort of like they're ongoing. You know, if a martyr, I mean, I'm not going to say that it's a martyr of blood is less than a person who isn't martyred by blood, but you know, if somebody's killed in one fell swoop, then you know they're kind of done. But if somebody is every single day just, you know, sort of being chipped away or whatever, I don't know how to word it, but these are the things that Our Lady's asking for, because basically it's the human will that's being chipped away. And it's what has to happen, because like Our Lady says over and over in the Virgin Mary in the Kingdom, you know, she says, you know, I'm begging you to banish your human will. And she's begging us, she begs us over and over, almost in every lesson, to please don't do your human will. Like, don't give life to your human will, because that's where all the problems come from. And that's why she's asking us to practice prayer and renunciation. And I think sacrifice is one of the greatest, it's actually one of the most joyful things we could ever do. Like, why were the martyrs so happy? Like, why was Maximilian so peaceful? Or why were the martyrs so contained, so peaceful? Why was Stephen, the first martyr, his face looked like an angel? Why was that? Because he was filled with joy. He was filled with the joy of the Lord. And that's another thing Our Lady talks about over and over and over, the joy of the Lord. I never knew what that was. I used to hear people say, oh, the joy of the Lord is your strength. And I used to think, oh my gosh, what is that? I used to think it was just some kind of like thing to make you feel better or something. But now I know what it is. It's really joy. It's not dependent on circumstances. It's depending on God. God is great, and he's bringing us to heaven, and he's working through all these little things that we give him every day, and all our sufferings, all our crosses, and all that. He's here. Everything for us is tailor-made, because he loves us, each individual, so much that he's calling each and every one to heaven, and to bring as many souls as we can with us. So life is full of joy because of heaven, and because of Our Lady, the Queen of Heaven, the Queen of Peace, the Queen of the Divine Will. Here, she's literally taking us by the hand and saying, here, I'll help you, I'll help you, I'll help you. This is what you do. I mean, it's so wonderful. I don't know. It's like, if your eyes are on heaven, if you have your eyes on heaven, then you know, you understand. But if your eyes are on earth, if your eyes are looking all around here on this earth, you're going to be very, 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 very sad, and very despairing, and very lost, because there's no reference point here on earth. You cannot get your footing here on earth. If you're looking here, you can't find your way. You're going to get more lost. You're going to sink more. You're going to drown. That's why she keeps saying, look toward heaven, long for heaven. So that's what I think is, I mean, that was part of my personal experience there, but.
Thank you. That's beautiful. And it's a great message too. Right. That even in our spiritual darkness, just keep our spiritual eyes looking to God, and he will guide you. Right.
And the one thing I was thinking about, somebody might ask, well, how could I be happy now? Because, you know, my husband is dying of cancer, or my sister just died, or my son is addicted to cocaine or heroin, or my son is in prison, or my daughter isn't speaking to me, or people could say that, how could I be happy? But Our Lady says in the book of the Kingdom of the Virgin Mary, she says, you know, I'm taking my personal responsibility is to make you happy. Can you believe that? That's what she says. That she's saying, as our mother, she wants to make us happy. And we look everywhere. We look, everybody in this world, including me, most of my life, look everywhere for happiness. And it doesn't exist anywhere except with Our Lady and with God. It doesn't exist anywhere. I can tell you, it doesn't exist anywhere. Because you can't be happy when you have all these problems on earth. I mean, we all have problems, you know, and they don't go away. They don't just evaporate. It's not like all of a sudden you give your heart to God, or you become a Christian, and you give your heart to Jesus, or you know, you start practicing your faith or whatever it might be, and all of a sudden you're just, everything's fine. No, it might even get more difficult. So how were the saints actually happy? Mother Teresa said to smile. One of the best things you could do in your life is smile. Well, how do you smile when things are going so wrong? You know, but it's like these crosses, these things that we have, these everyday problems, they're not everyday. Some of them are astronomically difficult, but they're the raw material that's what it says in the Book of Heaven. That's what Our Lady says. You know, even in the scriptures, we know it says, count it all joy when you fall into diverse, you know, trials and stuff, because this is the way that your faith is going to be purified. You're going to be like gold, you know. And so this is the raw material that God uses for our salvation and to help us to be evangelists for other souls, to help other souls with our life. You know, it's not just offering it up like, oh, I have to grunt and offer it up. I'm so miserable. I don't like it. I don't want it this way. It's like you actually, you give yourself to God, or you allow, I guess the key word is allow, you let the divine will to reign in your heart. And you let God take over. And everything becomes easier, like it says in the Book of Heaven, or it says in the scripture, you know, everything becomes easy when you know,